It is quite common that successful men, high achievers, high performers, will hit a plateau with their sex addiction and porn addiction recovery. And this is largely because if you look at most of the literature and the programs, they focus on two elements. The first element is this concept that you are using sex, porn, and affairs to regulate your emotions, regulate stress, any unpleasant emotions or unpleasant thoughts that you're experiencing. Most of my clients who are all successful high performers, a lot of them are not experiencing these negative emotions very often. In fact, they love their life. They take pretty good care of themselves. They have a lot of nice things. They have beautiful families, a wonderful wife. It's actually their sexual acting out will happen when they are happy, content. It'll totally happen at random times. So this whole piece doesn't really line up for them. And the second thing you will hear most commonly within the sex addiction world is that sex addicts have this feeling of being a bad person or worthless. And that this is a shared belief amongst addicts. And again, in the high achieving population, this doesn't necessarily resonate. A lot of my clients who are high performers have had this mindset of being a high performer, being called for more, and knowing that they were going to accomplish great things. They've known this since they were young. And so this concept of believing they are a bad or a worthless person, again, that just doesn't line up. And so because a lot of the literature, the programs, the textbooks, the books focus on these two elements, using sex to regulate your emotions or because you have this deep wound of feeling bad or worthless, it doesn't resonate so much with these high performers. In my experience, I find that there are four elements that high achievers, these successful men, will end up using sex, porn, addiction, or affairs in their life. Okay, these four elements. First element is there is the addictive element, okay? And so this is the idea that you are using sex, porn, and affairs almost as a chemical addiction, as a source for dopamine. Now, dopamine shifts our focus and our motivation. When an addiction forms, we are using, in this case, sex, porn, and affairs, to shift our attention away from an unpleasant thought process. So this could be as simple as boredom. This could be as complicated as a very stressful situation. So you are actually using sex, porn, and affairs as a chemical addiction, right? So there's that addictive element. And this is what the vast majority of the sex addiction literature is going to work on. There's actually three other elements that I find affect high achievers and successful men more than the addictive element. And these remaining ones, first off, number two is societal norms or masculine norms. And so what I mean when I say societal norms is that pornography has been normalized. Strip clubs have been normalized. They're all over the country. Cheating has become normal, right? It's not uncommon to see men flirting or having these extramarital relations outside of the marriage, right? And doing it in public. So oftentimes in front of their friends, where their male friends will know about this. And so between pornography being normalized, with 1 in 4 internet searches are pornographic, there's this normalization, whether it be societally or masculine normalization, that makes this behavior feel the high performer, to the high achiever, like this is normal. Monogamy is actually the construct that is abnormal. And so this divide, it affects these successful men in the sense that if so many of these people that they admire, who they consider in their same social class or level of life status or achievement that they're trying to come to, if these men are engaging in these practices, it feels like, oh, my wife just needs to settle down. Hey, I get why she thinks this is a big deal, but everybody's doing it. This normalization, it shouldn't be taken lightly. It's the reason why a lot of men will keep this whole thing a secret, because there's a lot of them that believes, hey, look around, this is normal. You can barely turn on the television set without seeing an advertiser using sex to sell. But again, just because it's normal does not mean that we should engage in it. It certainly doesn't mean that your wife's going to be okay with it. A lot of the times we have to imagine, if your daughter was being exploited in that same way, would you have this same feelings like this, right? So re-injecting the humanity and separating from, okay, just because society and men have normalized this behavior, is this aligned with my values? Is this going to allow me to keep my family and stay married, right? Point number 3 is the aspect of control. We see this a lot in a high achiever population of successful men. They tend to like to control things, and they're good at it. They're good at controlling things. It's largely a lot of the reason why they're so successful. But usually the control that we're talking about when it comes to sex and porn addiction and even affairs is this idea that you're entitled to keeping this sexuality in you secret, and that it's yours and it's nobody else's business. And so oftentimes men will find themselves doing bizarre behaviors in this category. They might look for a fair partner or a prostitute, but then they're not doing it to actually do it. They'll stop shy. They'll see if it's available, but then they won't pursue it. In their head, they're not doing anything wrong because they didn't actually set anything up. They're just surveying the area. Other men will look for what we call edgy material, so something that's not necessarily pornographic in nature, but they'll go kind of surfing for these bizarre things that they never did before recovery, but now that they're in recovery, they find this weird urge to essentially keep this addiction in their life. And it's really hard for men to wrap their head around this because they're not necessarily acting out by definition, but they basically are. And it's this aspect of control. It's usually comes from childhood. It's this concept of, hey, this is my sexuality. I like this, so what's wrong with it? If I like this piece, then I should be entitled to keeping it a secret. And the other aspect of that is deception gives you a one-up. It gives you a one-up on everyone around you because you know and they don't know, and you get to keep it. It puts you in a power position. Because this forms very, very early, it's actually uncommon that men know they're doing this. If you were to ask them, are you lying to keep this secret alive? A lot of them would say, oh, no, I don't think I'm doing that. But when you look at their behaviors, they're not necessarily looking at anything pornographic, and they don't necessarily want to. They're not necessarily lining up the affair partner or the prostitute or whatever they're doing, but they're playing in this arena. And it's this aspect of control. And there's a lot of things that fall into this category. And I actually find these behaviors are the ones that are the last to go for a lot of men in recovery. They're just doing this stupid behavior. It's very offensive to their wife. And the man's response is always, oh, what's the big deal? I didn't actually end up doing anything. But again, in this addiction, one would say that that's still acting out regardless of what you saw and if you actually acted on it. And then the fourth element is getting your human needs met through sex or sex appeal, sexual attraction. And I think this is a big one too with men. A lot of successful men and high performers, they enjoy attention. They enjoy being admired and lusted after. And so oftentimes the whole concept of using women and their attention to facilitate needs that you have. So this could be a connection, love, belonging need that you have. This could be a status need that you have, that in order to be one of the guys in this particular status, that you need to have certain type of women of some caliber or look, whatever it is. You need to know that they want you in order for you to be a man in that category. So it's not necessarily that your objective is to get a divorce and leave your wife and leave your family, but it's like I need to have some sort of practice so that I know women like this find me attractive, because that satisfies my status as a desirable man or a successful man or a man that women want to be with. And in some areas, this is also esteem, right? Our needs for respect and admiration. But the interesting piece is there's a lot more meaningful and sustainable ways to be respected and admired. In fact, I would say if a lot of people found out about a lot of these activities within their sex addiction, porn addiction, or their affairs, when they were using women to actually enhance their own value, get their own needs met, you would actually lose a lot of respect and admiration from other men. And so when we're looking at human needs, and we found a lot of these men who they're subconsciously reluctant to get rid of these behaviors. The fact that, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to flirt with another woman again. They feel like they're missing out on something. This is not your fault. This is outside influence, and society will convince us of these things. But we feel like we need to get attention and be wanted and be lusted after because, sex and sex appeal and sexual attraction has just become such a big part of our culture. People go to gyms. They spend tons of money on their clothing and their appearance. It's been built up to be something so important. And so when men are in recovery, especially successful men, charismatic men, outgoing men, the idea that, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to check women out. Women aren't going to be able to check me out. They feel like they lost something. I find this a huge reason why men keep their sex addiction around, even if it's subconscious and it's harming their marriage, it's harming things that they actually want. So in summary here, you're going to hear most dominantly in the sex addiction world, because the sex addiction world really focuses on the addiction aspect. You're going to hear tips, advice, and therapy around how to stop using sex to regulate your emotions and how to stop using sex to avoid feeling bad or worthless. And again, I don't find a lot of the high performers, high achievers in my group that they're dealing with tons of these unpleasant emotions all the time, and that they're dealing with these feelings of worthlessness. A lot of them have very successful, fulfilling lives. And so a lot of that stuff will not apply. There is that addictive element, sure, yes, but there's also 3 other elements. This is going to be societal norms, masculine norms. It's going to be control, and this need to deceive and keep your sexual needs and behaviors a secret. It's this perception that, hey, it's none of your business, right? And then element number 4, which is getting your human needs met through sex or sex appeal, using other women to feel a sense of respect, admiration, being wanted. Keep an eye out for these things, because as a successful man, a lot of these elements are more important to us. Control, respect, admiration, societal norms, and falling within social statuses. A lot of these things are what keeps this addiction around, not necessarily just the addictive element.